The corner market smelled of old wood and fresh bread. Behind the counter, 17-year-old Zara Williams stacked cans on a shelf, her hands moving quickly, almost automatically. Her back ached, but she didn't complain. She never did. She had been working there every evening after school, trying to bring home a few extra dollars for the bills. Her grandmother's health wasn't what it used to be, and the money was always short. That night, the routine broke. Just as Zara was about to sweep the floor, her grandmother's neighbor knocked on the shop door holding a small envelope. "This came with the evening mail," she said, handing it over. Zara took it with little thought, expecting another bill. But the moment her eyes landed on the envelope, her stomach tightened. It wasn't like anything she had ever seen before. The paper was thick, cream-colored, the kind used for something important. Her name was written in looping handwriting, so elegant it didn't feel real. She flipped it over and saw a seal pressed into dark red wax. Her heart beat faster. She opened it with careful fingers. The words inside looked official, almost cold. It was from a law firm she had never heard of, Morrison, Sterling and Associates. The letter invited her to attend the reading of a will. Not just anyone's will. A billionaire's, Theodore Ashford III. For a moment, she thought it was a mistake. People like her didn't get letters from billionaires. She was just a poor teenager from the east side of the city. She barely had enough money to keep the lights on. Why would a man like that have her name written in his will? Her grandmother came into the shop just then, her hands rough from a long day cleaning offices. "What's that you're holding, baby?" she asked gently. Zara handed her the letter. She expected her grandmother to laugh, to tell her it was nonsense. But the moment her grandmother read the name, Theodore Ashford, her face drained of all color. The letter slipped from her hands and fluttered to the floor. Zara bent quickly to pick it up. "Grandma, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice full of concern. Her grandmother's lips trembled. "Where did you hear that name?" she whispered, almost too soft to hear. "It's in this letter," Zara said. "They want me to come to some will reading. They say I'm mentioned in it." Her grandmother didn't move. She stared at the letter as if it was a ghost from her past. Finally, she knelt down to gather the pieces of mail that had scattered from her bag. Her hands shook so much, she dropped the same envelope twice. "You don't know him, do you?" Zara pressed. Her grandmother swallowed hard. "I knew him once," she whispered. Her eyes glistened. "A long time ago, before you were born. Before even your mother was born." The words hit Zara like a storm. Her grandmother, her quiet, humble grandmother who worked all her life just to keep food on the table, had known Theodore Ashford, the man whose name was on skyscrapers, whose picture hung in the hospital lobby. Her grandmother avoided her eyes. "Life happened, baby, that's all." But Zara could see there was more. There was a story buried in her grandmother's silence, something she wasn't ready to tell. Zara clutched the letter tighter. She felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity rising in her chest. Why would this man, this billionaire she had never met, write her name into his will? And why was her grandmother so shaken by it? That night, sleep refused to come. She lay awake in the tiny bedroom she shared with her grandmother, staring at the ceiling. Outside her window, the towering glass building of Ashford Industries gleamed in the night sky. She'd grown up in its shadow, never imagining it had anything to do with her life. But now, for reasons she didn't understand, she was being called into its heart. Her grandmother's pale face haunted her. The fear in her eyes, the way her voice had cracked when she said she knew him. There was history there, something painful, something hidden. And Zara was caught in the middle of it. She thought of all the nights she had gone to bed hungry so her grandmother could eat. She thought of the bills stacked on the kitchen counter, the rent that was always overdue, the electricity shut off, notices. And now this letter, this impossible letter, was telling her that she had to walk into a world of billionaires, lawyers, and polished suits. Her hands shook as she pressed the envelope to her chest. She didn't belong there. Everyone would know it the second she walked through the door. But deep inside, under the fear, there was something else. something stubborn. I have to go, she whispered to herself in the darkness. For 17 years she had been invisible, overlooked, dismissed. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe it was some cruel joke. But if it wasn't, if there was even the smallest chance that the letter was real, then her life was about to change forever. And as she lay in bed, staring at the city skyline, Zara felt her story beginning. Morning light washed the city in a pale gold as Zara ironed her one good dress on the kitchen table. The fabric was clean but thin. She smoothed the collar with slow, steady breaths. Her grandmother watched from the doorway with a cup of tea that had gone cold. Neither of them spoke much. They both knew this day would pull old doors open. They took the bus across town. Office towers rose like glass cliffs. Zara watched their reflections pass in the windows and kept her fingers on the letter inside her bag. Every time the bus jolted, she felt the weight of that paper like a small stone against her ribs. Her grandmother sat beside her with her hands folded, calm on the outside, storm on the inside. They reached Morrison, Sterling and Associates just before 9. The lobby felt like a museum. High ceilings, marble floors that hummed with quiet footsteps. A fountain whispered from a corner. People in dark suits moved with quick purpose and careful smiles. Zara stood at the edge of the room and told herself not to stare. She walked to the reception desk. The receptionist looked up with a trained smile that faded when she took in the thrifted dress in the old bag. Her tone cooled a little. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" Zara held up the letter. "I was asked to attend the reading of a will named Zara Williams," the receptionist typed. Her eyes flicked from the screen to Zara and back again. "Please take a seat. Someone will come for you." They sat on a leather bench near a frosted glass wall. Zara's foot tapped, then stopped when she made it stop. Her grandmother leaned close. "No matter what happens, you stand straight," she said softly. "Speak clear. Look people in the eye." Zara nodded. She kept her chin up. A man in a tailored navy suit approached. He was the kind of person who looked like he belonged everywhere. "Miss Williams." "I'm Daniel from Client Services. Please follow me." They walked down a long corridor lined with framed awards and quiet photographs. Zara studied the names under each frame. The same last name repeated again and again. Ashford in gold letters. Her pulse quickened. The conference room doors were taller than any doors she had seen. Dark wood, brass handles that didn't need to shine but did anyway. Daniel opened one and stood aside. Zara stepped into a room that smelled like polished tables and expensive perfume. Every head turned. A line of people sat along the far side of the table, each more perfect than the last. There were diamonds at a wrist, a watch face that caught the light, a silk tie with a tiny crest. Zara thought of the corner market, of sticky soda rings and coin trays. She swallowed and moved forward. "Excuse me," came a voice near the head of the table. The tone was crisp, meant to slice rather than speak. "This is a private meeting. The receptionist should not have allowed a visitor." Zara's fingers closed on the letter in her bag. "I was invited," she said. Her voice sounded too small in the large air. A woman in pearls lifted an amused smile. "Invited by whom?" "By the firm," Zara answered. She tried again, stronger. "By the estate lawyer." Another voice came, lower and colder, from a man with silver hair. "We are discussing family matters. This is not an open house." Zara felt heat climb her throat. She straightened. "I am supposed to be here." Her grandmother stepped inside behind her and took a quiet seat in the back row. She gave Zara a small nod. That said, "Keep going." A door at the other end opened and the lawyer entered. He was older, careful in his movements, carrying a leather portfolio that had lived many lives. "Good morning, everyone," he said. "Thank you for your patience, Miss Williams. I'm glad you could make it. Please have a seat." Murmurs rose around the table. The Pearl woman scoffed. "This is absurd. Who is this girl?" The silver-haired man leaned forward. "If this is some dramatic gesture, I will not indulge it." Zara sat in a chair against the wall. She folded her hands in her lap to keep them from shaking. Her grandmother's presence felt like a hand between her shoulder blades, steadying her. The lawyer took his place, adjusted his glasses, and opened the portfolio. As we begin, I will ask that we hold questions until the first section is complete. A blonde woman with perfect posture did not wait. I object to unknown parties in the room. Theodore would never allow this. The lawyer's gaze stayed polite but firm. Mrs. Ashford, the invite list is set by the will. Miss Williams is on it. Silence pressed in a little. Zara heard the soft hum of the air system and the faint tap of someone's ring on the table. The lawyer began. He read through the formal words that divide houses and accounts and paintings, in calm, practiced rhythms. He named charities and trusts. He listed gifts to staff with a warmth that softened his voice. The family listened with the quiet greed of expectation. Heads nodded at numbers that would have built 100 neighborhoods, like the one Zara came from. Zara sat and let the words pass like trains she could not board. She looked at the hands on the table. Smooth knuckles, polished nails, no trace of bleach or cashier paper cuts. She felt very young and also very old. Then a shift. The lawyer paused, flipped to a sealed envelope, and set his hand on it like it might move on its own. His jaw tightened. "What is that?" the silver-haired man asked. "A special provision," the lawyer said. "The seal bears the family crest. It is addressed." He looked up. His eyes found Zara. "To Miss Zara Williams." The room cracked open. Voices rose. "That cannot be right. What nonsense is this? Who is she to receive anything at all?" Zara did not stand. She did not shrink. She placed the letter from her bag on her knee. It matched the seal on the table. She lifted her chin. The lawyer broke the wax. The sound was small, but it carried. He unfolded the paper, read the first line, and went still for one heartbeat. When he spoke, his voice had a human weight. "This section must be read in full," he said. "It is the direct statement of the deceased." He began to read. "My dear Zara." Air left the room. The blonde woman's face drained. The silver-haired man's ring stopped tapping. A ripple of disbelief moved around the table. Zara's breath caught. She did not look at the family. She looked at her grandmother. Her grandmother's eyes shone but did not break. The lawyer read on. He spoke of a young love that had been real and hidden. He spoke of fear that had been chosen over courage. He spoke of a daughter and the child of that daughter. He spoke the names that stitched the past to the present. He said the words that put Zara inside the story, not at the door. When he finished the first page, he set it down with care. He turned to the next and the next. Each paragraph laid a stone on the floor between the two worlds in the room. Zara felt shock, yes, but something else burned brighter. It was the feeling you get when someone finally says your name in a room that tried not to see you. It was not victory. It was not revenge. It was recognition. The lawyer closed the letter for now and looked up. His eyes were kind and tired. "There is more to be read," he said. "But before we proceed, I will state for the record that Miss Williams has standing." The blonde woman stood so fast her chair scraped. "This is humiliation. This is theater." "No," Zara said, and her voice reached the end of the table. "This is truth." Her grandmother's hands were still folded. Her shoulders loosened for the first time since dawn. The lawyer gathered the remaining pages. "We will continue," he said. Zara sat a little taller. The room had not changed, but she had. She was no longer a visitor at the edge of marble and money. She was part of why everyone was here. And for the first time since the letter arrived, she felt ready to hear everything. The lawyer lifted the first page again and read in a steady voice. "My dear Zara, if you are in this room, then the truth has finally come to meet you. I should have spoken it when I was young. I should have stood beside your grandmother when it was hard to stand. I did not. I let fear choose for me. I am sorry." A breath passed through the room. The blonde woman stared at the table. The silver-haired man laced his fingers so tight his knuckles blanched. Zara kept her eyes on the paper. She wanted to hear every word. He read about a small office in the late 1960s, a stiff dress code, a secretary with sharp mind and soft laugh, a young man who thought success was the same as safety. He wrote about coffee breaks that turned into walks, about books shared, about a promise to be brave that fell apart when his father threatened to cut him off and ruin the woman he loved. The lawyer's voice did not rush. He let the words land. He read the names that mattered. Evelyn Rains, the child who came 2 years later, the distance that followed, the regret that never left. Zara felt her grandmother's presence behind her like a steady light. She did not turn, but she could picture the set of her grandmother's shoulders and the way her hands would fold to hide a tremor. A simple dignity, a strength that had raised her. The silver-haired man spoke without looking up. This is a story. It is not proof. The lawyer nodded once like he had expected that line. He reached into the portfolio and set a flat envelope on the table. Inside were old photographs. A young Evelyn smiling in a sunlit park. The same man who now lay in the ground, sleeves rolled up, gaze soft in a way the newspapers never showed. Letters written in careful ink, dates, places. A hospital form with a name redacted except for the last line where a signature matched the one on the will. He set out a second folder. Test results. Chain of custody. Independent labs. He did not dramatize it. He just placed each sheet so that anyone who wished could read. The blonde woman looked but did not touch. The silver-haired man read the headings and then leaned back like the paper had heat. The lawyer returned to the letter. He read a paragraph written for the room. To those who share my last name, you inherited doors that opened because others were kept shut. I taught you to think we were better because we were comfortable. I was wrong. The success you enjoy is tied to a story you never learned. Learn it now. The family sat very still. The Polish on the table showed their faces back. To them. For a moment the room felt honest. The lawyer turned another page. This one was for Zara alone. He wrote about knowing her grades, about the twin jobs, and the way she carried her grandmother shopping on foot when the bus did not come. He wrote about the night the lights went out and she studied by a window because the street lamp still worked. He wrote about the scholarship applications she filled in secret, because hope felt dangerous. Zara's throat tightened. She did not want to cry, in front of these people who worked so hard to pretend she did not belong. She lifted her chin and breathed slow through her nose. She could feel her grandmother doing the same behind her. The lawyer closed the letter for a moment and addressed the room in his own voice. There will be questions. You will have time for them. But the will is clear. Miss Williams is a beneficiary. She was named by the deceased with full knowledge and with counsel. Our firm verified every element he asked us to verify. The blonde woman spoke at last. Her tone had lost its edge and now carried something like disbelief. Why tell this now? Why not years ago? The lawyer did not answer that. He went back to the document. He read the next section, which listed gifts already granted. A donation in Evelyn's name to the hospital that had once refused her a job. A fund to clear the medical debts that had followed their family for years. A provision for housing so that no one could push them from their home again. At the mention of the debt, Zara felt a weight lift that she had carried since she was old enough to read the word past due. She did not celebrate. She let relief slide into her bones and sit there like warmth. Her grandmother spoke for the first time. Thank you, she said, not to the room, not to the lawyer, but to the air where the man she had known might still be listening. Her voice was steady and full. The silver-haired man turned to the lawyer. If you intend to dismantle an estate based on guilt, you will meet resistance. The lawyer's eyes were kind, but unshaken. We intend to carry out the decedent's wishes as written and as witnessed. He picked up a small USB drive and set it near his hand, but did not use it yet. Then he pulled a single thick envelope with a red seal. He did not open it. He placed it in the center of the table and rested his fingers on it like a judge touching a book. Before I read the primary provision, he said, "There is a statement I am instructed to make." He read it word for word. The decedent met with estate specialists, constitutional experts, and civil rights counsel across 5 years. He reviewed these plans every 6 months. He recorded his statements on video. He requested independent verification that he was competent at the time of each revision. He asked for these steps because he knew that a truth delayed becomes a truth contested. The line hung in the air. Truth delayed becomes truth contested. Even the receptionist at the back of the room stopped pretending to adjust a calendar and listened. The blonde woman's jaw worked like she was grinding down a thought she did not want to swallow. The silver-haired man clasped his hands again and said nothing. The lawyer turned to Zara. "Miss Williams, there is an option in the will that concerns you directly. I must confirm that you understand that you have choice. You are not a passenger in this room. You are a party." Zara felt a new kind of quiet settle in her chest. Not silence born of fear. Silence born of attention. She met his eyes. "I understand." "Very well," he said. He broke the red seal and unfolded the final pages with care that looked like respect. He read a short passage first. It spoke about power and what people do to keep it. It spoke about who pays the cost when truth is hidden. It did not flatter anyone. Then he turned to the sentence that began the main clause and paused before the first number, like he was measuring the room. The silver-haired man leaned forward. The blonde woman held her breath. Even the framed certificates on the wall seemed to wait. In that long second, Zara looked down at her hands. There were faint cashier cuts across 2 knuckles from the week before. She thought of the shelf at the market that always wobbled at the end. She thought of the bus that rattled all the way down Riverside. She thought of the tower with the Ashford name that had filled her window since she was a child. She lifted her head. The lawyer began to read the primary provision. The door opened a crack and a junior assistant slipped in with a tray of water glasses. No one reached for them. The letter's words had moved something in the room that made small comforts feel strange. He spoke the first line of the clause and then the second. Each word landed like a stone dropped in a still pool. Zara heard gasps. A chair leg scraped. A ring tapped twice on wood and went still. She did not move. She took in each word and placed it next to the last. Then the lawyer stopped at a comma, looked up and said, "There is a recorded message that accompanies this section. You will all hear it today. After that, we will resume and complete the reading." He set the pages down but kept a finger on them. He reached for the USB. Zara did not look away. She felt the old world shifting inside the new one. She felt fear and duty and a fierce, plain hope. The lawyer inserted the drive. The screen on the wall woke with a soft glow. The room leaned forward as one. The screen filled with a quiet study. Dark wood, a lamp with a warm shade, books lined in neat rows. A framed photo turned slightly toward the camera. Theodore Ashford sat in a simple chair. No suit jacket, just a white shirt with sleeves rolled to the forearms. His hands were steady on the armrests. His eyes were not the ones from magazines. They were human, tired, clear. "Thank you for listening," he said. "If you are in that room, it means I did not do enough while I was alive. It means I have one last chance to speak the truth." He looked straight into the lens. The room felt smaller. Zara forgot about the polished table and the cold perfume. She only heard the voice in the speaker and the soft hum of the air. "When I was young," he said, "I loved a woman named Evelyn Rains. She worked at my father's firm. She was brilliant. She was kind. She was brave in ways I failed to be. We met. When the world punished people for what we were to each other, that is no excuse, it is the truth of the time. I chose my father's approval over a life with her. I have carried that choice like a stone for decades." In the back row, Evelyn sat a little straighter. Her fingers stayed folded. Her eyes shone, but she did not look away. Theodore reached to the side and lifted a small black and white photograph. The camera zoomed a little. It showed a young woman laughing with her head tilted back in a city park. Sun on her cheek. A man beside her with a look that did not hide what he felt. He held it up for a few seconds, then set it down. "I wrote letters," he said. "I promised I would do better. Then I failed again. When our daughter was born, I wanted to claim her. I wanted to stand in the light. My father made his threats. I believed him. I stepped back. I told myself there would be a time when it would be easier. That time never came. Cowardice has a way of sounding like reason. No one in the room moved. The blonde woman stared at the screen as if it might change the ending if she willed it hard enough. The silver-haired man had stopped tapping his ring. A clock on the far wall ticked once and seemed to feel ashamed of the sound. "I do not ask for forgiveness," Theodore said. "I ask for honesty. I have tried to do good in public for many years. I sent checks. I built wings on buildings. I shook hands and cut ribbons. None of that healed what I broke. I should have stood beside Evelyn. I should have raised my daughter. I should have known my granddaughter from the day she opened her eyes." He said her name, Zara. He said it like he had practiced it alone in that room until he could say it without his voice breaking. "I have watched you," he said. "I know the block where you live. I know the market where you work. I know you kept your grades up when the lights were off. I know you carried books like they were keys. I know you have a mind for systems and a heart that does not close. The world will try to tell you that you are lucky. You are not lucky. You were wronged. You were denied what should have been yours. That ends now." The blonde woman flinched as if struck. The silver-haired man breathed through his nose and stared at the carpet. Someone farther down the table whispered a short prayer under their breath. It sounded old and honest. Theodore leaned closer to the camera. He looked smaller and stronger at the same time. "To my family in that room," he said, "you learned comfort without learning cost. You thought merit and inheritance were the same thing. I let you think that. I am responsible for that. Today, you will hear the full plan. You will not like all of it. It is still the right plan. If you cannot accept that, then you may step aside. If you can, then work with the young woman who carries our name and also carries the parts of our history we hid." He reached for another object, a ring in a small box. The camera focused on the inscription inside. Not the family crest, 2 initials, E and T, worn thin by a thumb. "This was not in the papers," he said. "We promised each other we would make a life. I broke that promise. I have asked the lawyers to return this to Evelyn. It is hers." Evelyn's breath caught, a tiny sound. She covered her mouth and nodded toward the screen as if the camera could see her. "To you, Zara," he said. "I leave something else that is not a number. I leave you a story that belongs to you. Do not let anyone edit it to make themselves comfortable. Do not let them tell you who you were allowed to be. You know who you are. You have known from the first time you stood up in a room that wanted you small." He paused and sat back. The study light softened the lines on his face. "You will face people who speak in long sentences to make your head swim," he said. "Ask them to use plain words. You will face rooms that try to make you prove you belong. You do not have to prove what is already true. Stand. Say your name. Do the work. Then go home to the people who love you for yourself." The lawyer in the room lowered his eyes for a moment as if to give the video privacy. The receptionist at the far wall had stopped pretending to sort pens. Even the junior assistant who brought water stood with both hands on the tray and listened as if the tray would fall if he moved. "There is a legal part to all of this," Theodore said. "You will hear it from Mr. Morrison. I asked for every test and every verification he suggested. You will not be able to say this was done without care. You may still try to fight it. If you do, know that I prepared for that too. But I hope you will not spend your energy on a war you will not win. I hope you will choose the better work." He looked down once, then back at the camera. "If I could go back, I would stand beside Evelyn in daylight. I would hold my daughter and never let a boardroom make me set her down. I cannot go back. I can only set a better table now. Zara, you have a seat at it. Take it. Bring others with you. Make this name mean something new." He reached for the photo again and kept his hand on it. "I loved you, Evelyn," he said softly. "I failed you. I loved our daughter. I failed her. I love you, Zara. I hope to do one thing right while I still have a voice, even if that voice is only this recording." He lifted his chin. His eyes were clear. To the board, he said, support her. To my son, listen to her. To my widow, do not make her your enemy. To my city, hold us to the promises we are about to make. He nodded once to the unseen person behind the camera. The screen went dark. The room stayed silent. For a long heartbeat, no one moved. Then chairs creaked as people remembered their bodies. Someone exhaled like they had been holding air for a year. A phone buzzed and was slapped quiet. The city hummed outside the windows as if nothing had changed, though everything had. Evelyn stood. She did not step forward. She only spoke. Her voice was calm and low. Thank you for saying her name, she said. The blonde woman found words but not balance. This is cruel, she said. This is theater and guilt and deathbed tricks. The lawyer answered in his own voice. It was not harsh, it was firm. We have documentation, we have evidence, we have capacity assessments over years, not days. You will have copies. You will have time. Today we have a will to complete. He set a small velvet box on the table and slid it toward the edge closest to Evelyn's chair. She did not reach for it yet. Her hands were folded. Her gaze stayed steady. The silver-haired man looked at Zara for the first time without contempt. His face was hard to read. He saw a teenager in a thrifted dress who did not flinch, and he saw something else that unsettled him. He looked away first. Mr. Morrison placed his fingers on the final pages. Before we move to the next section, he said, I will note for the record that the decedent directly addressed Miss Williams and the family. He did so with full awareness. The recording date is stamped. The medical competency letter for that date is attached. Now we proceed. He breathed in. He began to read the provisions that would carry the room from confession to consequence. He named trusts. He named transfers that were already executed. He named protections that could not be undone by anger or press releases. Zara did not hear each legal phrase. She heard the shape of what was coming. She felt it in the way the family tightened. She felt it in the way her grandmother's shoulders loosened. She felt it in her own spine as it straightened without effort. She thought of the market, the shelf that wobbled, the way she learned to hold pressure with one hand and turn the screw with the other until it steadied. This felt like that. Take the weight. Turn the right piece. Keep breathing. The lawyer paused at a line that changed the air. He looked up. We will break for 5 minutes, he said. Then we will read the main clause. People stood. People didn't. The blonde woman made a call with her back to the room and a hand over her mouth. The silver-haired man stared at the dark screen as if it might light again and take the words back. Zara turned to her grandmother. They did not hug. They did not cry. Evelyn reached out and fixed a small thread on Zara's sleeve. The kind of motion a grandmother makes when she wants to put the world right with her hands. Are you ready? Evelyn asked. Zara looked at the long table, at the tall doors, at the stack of papers that held a life she never thought she could touch. Yes, she said. The 5 minutes passed. People sat again. The lawyer placed both hands on the portfolio. We resume, he said. The room settled. The floor felt steady under Zara's feet. He turned the page to the main clause. Mr. Morrison placed both hands on the portfolio and read the main clause in a voice that did not shake. To my granddaughter, Zara Williams, I leave the controlling shares of Ashford Industries, a clear majority. Enough to set the course of the company without fear of a closed door. The words fell into the room and stayed there. No one breathed for a heartbeat. Then a chair scraped. A glass touched the table and clicked too loud. He continued. I transfer to her my personal investment accounts, the properties listed in Schedule A, and liquid funds to secure her education and independence. I also ask that she be seated as chair of the Ashford Foundation and direct its endowment toward work that repairs what our name helped break. Zara stared at the grain of the table. The letters on the page felt like they had weight. Controlling shares, chair of a foundation. She was a teenager who knew the price of bus fare to the cent. She was a girl who counted coins in a jar before buying rice. Now a company's future had her name on it. The blonde woman pushed back her chair and stood tall. No. You cannot do this. She pointed at the paper like it had lied. The silver-haired man leaned forward, voice low. We will contest. On capacity, on undue influence, on anything that keeps this farce out of the papers. Mr. Morrison did not raise his voice. You may seek counsel. The decedent sought counsel for 5 years. He met medical standards each time. He made a change. He recorded statements. He funded a legal defense. If you contest, we will meet you in court with documents, witnesses, and time. He set another folder on the table and slid it forward. These are copies for you. The originals are kept off-site. The blonde woman lifted the folder with 2 fingers and set it down again like it might stain. Zara's grandmother sat very still in the back row. Her hands were folded, but the tension had loosened. Her eyes did not leave her granddaughter. Mr. Morrison read on. The foundation will be placed under new bylaws, transparency requirements, independent audits, community seats on the board. The endowment will be directed to scholarships, legal aid, and small business grants in neighborhoods our projects displaced. The goal is not charity. The goal is repair. He turned a page. There is also an instruction for the company. An ethics review of historical contracts. Vendor standards that close the door to firms that profit by exclusion. A workforce program with paid apprenticeships. Annual reporting on progress. This is not a press release. It is policy. A murmur moved around the table. Some faces hardened, others looked down. The silver-haired man tried a different angle. Even if this stands, the board will not accept her. She is a child. She has never run anything. Mr. Morrison kept his gaze on the clause and spoke without heat. She will appoint an interim operating committee and a slate of advisors with expertise. The majority vote is hers. The timeline is set. The first shareholders' meeting under the new structure is scheduled for 6 months from today. He looked up at Zara. Miss Williams, the will gives you choice. You may decline any role that you do not wish to assume. The shares are not conditional. How you use them is up to you. You have time to learn. You have resources set aside for that. Purpose. Zara's mouth felt dry. She did not stand, she did not grandstand. She spoke so that everyone could hear. I will not rush a decision that affects thousands of workers. I will learn first. Then I will act. Her voice was even. The words were simple. The room could not attack them. The blonde woman let out a tight laugh that had no joy. This is theater. This is a child reading lines. Zara turned her head and looked at her without blinking. I stocked shelves last night. I will not be easy to frighten. Silence met the line. It did not need to be louder. Mr. Morrison moved to the next section. There are protections for Miss Williams and for Evelyn Raines. Housing security. Debt relief already executed. A personal security detail is authorized at her request. There is a media plan. If the news reaches the press this week, you will have statements to read and numbers to answer. The words shook the air. The story would not stay in this room. It would walk into the city and take a seat at dinner tables and office kitchens. It would sit at bus stops and barbershops and church steps. It would gather its own weight. Mr. Morrison closed the folder and took out a slim, hard case. Inside were 3 items. A key card to a building with a skyline view, a small brass house key on a ring with 2 letters, and a fountain pen with a blue barrel that had been polished by years of use. He set the pen on a lined page above a signature block. There is nothing to sign to receive what is already yours, he said. But the decedent asked that you acknowledge receipt of the letter and the video. It is ceremonial. It is also real. If you wish. Zara stared at the pen. It was heavier than a plastic ballpoint. It looked like it had signed contracts and birthday cards. She reached out. The barrel was cool. Her name looked small above the line. She thought of the first time she wrote it on a school form for free lunch. She thought of the last time she wrote it on a timesheet at the market. She signed. The ink flowed smooth. The letter of her first name looked the same as it always had. The last name looked different to her. Not because of the letters, because of what they were tied to now. The blonde woman spoke again, this time aiming at Mr. Morrison. We will seek an injunction. You may, he said. The defense fund is active. The court filings are prepared. You should know we will file a request to unseal the decedent's deposition, if you proceed. It contains details you have not yet heard. His tone stayed polite. His eyes did not. The silver-haired man's jaw flexed. You would attack your own clients. We will defend the wishes of our client, he said. A young associate entered with a discreet folder and a nervous swallow. He whispered in Mr. Morrison's ear and slipped. Back out. Mr. Morrison nodded once. The press has not been notified by us, he said. Someone outside this room may have spoken. There are reporters across the street. Building security will escort anyone who wishes to leave by the side entrance. I recommend you take a breath before you speak. Words said angry tend to last longer than you want. A few faces went pale. The blonde woman picked up her phone. The silver-haired man put his away. Zara did not move to the door. She turned in her chair and looked at her grandmother. Do you want to go? She asked. Evelyn shook her head. Not yet. Mr. Morrison gathered the last papers. There is one more instruction, he said. The decedent asked that the foundation hold its first town hall in the neighborhood where Miss Williams lives. No ballroom, no stage, folding chairs in the recreation center. He wrote those words. He underlined them. For the first time since the reading began, a small smile touched the corner of Evelyn's mouth. He would not have done that when he was young, she said softly. No, Mr. Morrison said. He would not. The blonde woman found a new target. How will a teenager lead a foundation? How will she face a board? How will she balance school and this circus? Zara looked at her again, but her voice was not sharp. It was steady. By asking questions, by listening, by showing up on time, by hiring people who are better than me at what they do, by not lying when I do not know something. There was no answer to that did not sound small. Mr. Morrison closed the portfolio and stood. This concludes the reading. Copies will be provided. Security will assist with the exits. Miss Williams, if you and Ms. Raines can spare a moment, I would like to introduce you to the advisory team. We will go at your pace. Nothing today requires a speech. Nothing today requires a camera. Zara stood and felt her knees hold. She felt the floor hold. She looked down the length of the table. She saw anger. She saw shock. She also saw two faces near the end who looked like they might be ready to work. A woman from compliance with a notebook already open. A facilities manager with a badge on a lanyard who gave her a small nod that said, I have been waiting for this. Zara picked up the pen case and the key card. She left the brass key where it lay and looked back at Evelyn. Do you want to carry it? She asked. Evelyn stood and took the small ring in her palm. Her fingers closed around it. She did not cry. She looked like someone who had found a road that had been hidden for 40 years and was not surprised it was still there. They walked to the far corner where a side door waited. The air felt cooler there. The city noise came through faint from the street below. A security guard in a dark jacket opened the door and tipped his head in respect. As they stepped into the hallway, Mr. Morrison spoke in a low voice. You do not need to decide anything today. Go home, eat, sleep. Tomorrow we will talk about what the first week looks like. You are not alone. Zara nodded. Thank you, she said. He handed her a thin binder. It had tabs with plain words. Shares, foundation, security, school. The simplest, things first. Someone had thought to make it readable. In the elevator, Evelyn pressed the brass key into Zara's hand for a moment, and then took it back again like they were sharing the weight. What are you thinking? She asked. Zara watched the floors tick down behind the glass. That we take the bus, she said. That we stop at the market and tell them I need a few days off. That we buy bread and soup on the way home. That we sit at the small table and make a list. Evelyn nodded. A good list, she said. They stepped out into the lobby. The fountain still whispered in the corner. A receptionist pretended to straighten a stack of forms and did not meet their eyes. The guard pointed them to a side exit where the street opened like a wide river. Outside, the air felt real. People walked dogs. A bike bell rang. A bus sighed to a stop at the curb as if it had been waiting for them. Zara and her grandmother moved toward the bus together. The world had changed. The route number had not. At the door of the bus, the driver looked up and gave a small smile, no different than any other day, the kind of smile that says, "I see you." They climbed on and found 2 seats together. Zara set the binder on her lap and placed one hand on it. She looked out the window as the city slid by. The tower with the Ashford name rose above the blocks she knew by heart. It did not look like a fortress anymore. It looked like a place that could be used. She took a slow breath. Her phone buzzed once. She did not check it. She leaned her shoulder against her grandmother's and felt the answer right there. The work would be hard. The noise would be loud. The road would be long. She was ready to start. The next morning, the apartment felt smaller, like the walls were listening. Zara stood at the sink and washed 2 bowls from last night's soup. The faucet dripped a slow rhythm. Outside, a car idled, then moved on. She could feel the city waking up to her name. Her grandmother set a plate of toast on the table and took the chair by the window. She had opened the curtain only halfway. Light fell across the table in a clean stripe. "We will keep this simple," her grandmother said. "Eat. Make a list. 1 thing at a time." Zara nodded. She took a bite and reached for the binder Mr. Morrison had given her. The first tab said shares. The second said foundation. The third said security. The fourth said school. The pages were written in plain words, like someone had sat down and asked, what would help a teenager understand a company without insult or fear? Her phone buzzed. Unknown numbers. Messages from classmates. A text from her shift manager at the market that made her throat tight in a good way. "Come when you can. We are proud of you." They left the apartment through the side door. 2 men in quiet suits waited by the stairs and followed at a distance that said they were there but would not crowd. Outside, a woman with a camera stood, across the street. She raised it halfway and then set it down when she saw the grandmother's face. Not everyone forgot how to be human. At the corner market, the bell over the door gave its same soft ring. The owner came from the back with a worried smile. He wiped his hands on his apron and hugged her lightly. "You tell me how much time you need," he said. "If you ever want hours again, you have them. If you need a place to sit when things get loud, you have that too." Zara thanked him and meant it. She turned in her apron and felt the string slide through her fingers like a small goodbye. She took a loaf of bread and a carton of milk to the counter, then put them back. The milk could wait. They were not counting quarters today, not for this. She still counted in her head out of habit. It did not feel wrong. It felt like a map she would always carry. Back at the apartment, the security team gave them a small card with 2 phone numbers and a simple plan. If someone follows you in a car, turn right twice. If someone asks you a question you do not want to answer, say you will speak when you are ready. If you are afraid, call. They said it without drama. They did not make her feel weak for needing help. By noon, the story was everywhere. A neighbor from the 3rd floor knocked to say the evening news wanted a comment. A boy from the building asked if she was going to buy the block. She laughed and told him she could barely keep a spider plant alive. He laughed too and showed her a skateboard trick in the hallway. It was a moment of ordinary in a day that had none. In the afternoon, she went to the firm to meet the advisory team. They took a side entrance again. The guard nodded. Inside a small conference room, 4 people waited with notebooks and water bottles. "I am Priya," said the woman from compliance with the open notebook. "We will make sure every promise is a plan, and every plan has steps." "I am Leon," said the facilities manager with the badge on a lanyard. "I know every floor in the tower. If you want to see how a building breathes, I will show you." "I am Ruth," said a quiet woman with gray streaks in her hair. "Communications. Plain language. No spin. You will not say what you do not mean. You will not be alone when the microphones come. I am Jorge, said a calm man in a simple blazer. Legal strategy on the foundation side. I came up in a neighborhood like yours. I have not forgotten how to listen. They did not try to impress her with heavy words. They asked what she needed to feel steady this week. She said she needed to understand the first 10 things that could not wait. They wrote them on the whiteboard in short lines. Board briefing, investor call, court notice, media statement, town hall plan, scholarship framework, temporary office, safety, school meeting, family contact, if any. Priya handed her a one-page schedule. We can move any of this, she said. Nothing is a command. It is a map. They set up the investor call for the next morning. Ruth drafted a media statement in clean sentences and asked if Zara wanted to read it now or wait. Zara read it now. It said she had learned the truth with the rest of the room. It said she was honored and overwhelmed. It said she would listen before she acted. It said her grandmother was not available for interviews and asked reporters to respect that. It did not pick a fight. It held a line. Near 3 o'clock, a process server delivered a packet to Mr. Morrison's office. The widow and her son had filed for a temporary restraining order. They wanted the court to freeze the transfer, to stop the press statements, to keep the company where it had been. Jorge read the papers, looked up and said, "We expected this. The hearing is in 48 hours. We will answer." That evening they cooked rice and lentils. The apartment smelled warm. They ate by the window with the curtains still halfway open. The tower with the Ashford name stood in the distance like a ship in a harbor. Zara thought of taking a tour with Leon to learn where the boilers lived and how the freight elevator sounded. Before bed, she wrote in a notebook, not the binder. Not the legal plan, her own list. Call school counselor, thank the market. Learn the difference between revenue and cash flow. Ask why the old contracts look the way they look. Ask what it cost to change them. Sleep. She slept. The next day brought the investor call. She sat at a small desk in a borrowed office with Ruth on one side and Priya on the other. The screen showed square faces with titles under their names. People who spoke in calm voices about risk and continuity and guidance. Zara listened. When they asked for her remarks, she did not pretend to know what she did not know. I will not make up answers, she said. I will tell you what I am learning and when I will know more. The people who built this company's best work will still be here tomorrow. I will ask them to teach me. You will get a timeline and a plan before I change anything. If you need complex language to feel safe, you will not get it from me. You will get the truth in small words. There was a pause. Then a voice came from an older man with an old-school headset. Thank you, he said. Plain is good. After the call, Leon took her to the tower. They did not go to the executive floor. They started in the basement. He showed her the pipes that made heat in winter and the chillers that kept servers cool in summer. He introduced her to a woman who had kept those systems running for 20 years. The woman shook Zara's hand and said, I have been waiting for the day someone asked to start down here. On the loading dock, a janitor on break nodded at her. He didn't ask for a photo. He said, My niece wants to be an engineer. She would like your scholarship list when you have it. Zara wrote down the girl's name. In the elevator up to a mid-level floor, they stopped at a hallway with bulletin boards, photos of team picnics and bake sale flyers and a lost scarf sign, people who made a company breathe. She took it in and felt the idea of a company shift from gold letters to working hands. Court day came fast. The room was smaller than she expected. No marble, no polished table, just rows of benches and a judge, with an even voice. The widow and her son sat together with their lawyers. Zara sat with Jorge and Mr. Morrison and kept her hands folded in her lap. The other side argued that this was chaos, that the transfer would cause harm, that there were questions about capacity. Jorge stood and spoke in that calm way that makes people lean forward. The decedent met with doctors. He recorded statements. He created a fund to defend his will. The shares are already transferred under statute. We are not asking this court to bless a change. We are asking it not to undo a lawful act. There is no emergency beyond discomfort. Discomfort is not a legal injury. The judge listened. The judge asked 2 careful questions. The judge denied the restraining order. The case would continue, but nothing would be frozen today. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited like birds on a wire. Ruth handed Zara the printed statement. Zara read it aloud, sentence by sentence. She did not take questions. She said thank you and stepped away. The microphones followed for a few steps and then stopped. She had given them what she chose to give. That night, the first stack of letters arrived at the firm. Some were cruel. She did not read those. Ruth did and kept them in a file that would not live in Zara's head. Some were kind. A teacher from across town wrote that her students had argued about fairness all morning, and that it was the best conversation they had ever had. A nurse from the hospital wing with the Ashford name wrote that she remembered a time when certain families felt unwelcome in that lobby and that perhaps this would change. A boy who loved numbers sent a chart he made about scholarships and asked if he could help. She wrote back to that one herself. Yes, she wrote. We need charts. The advisory team met again. They drafted the town hall plan, folding chairs, no stage, a sign-up sheet for speakers so that shy voices would not be lost, translation headsets, child care in a side room, a sign that said, tell the truth and be kind. Leon said he knew where to borrow the chairs. Priya said she knew who to call for, the headsets at a fair price. Ruth said she would print the sign. A message came from the board chair requesting a meeting. Not a demand. A request. They set it for a Friday morning. Mr. Morrison coached her on procedure. Ruth coached her on breathing. Her grandmother pressed the collar of her jacket with a warm iron and ran a hand over her shoulder. The boardroom felt different with her invited. The fear was still there, but it sat beside purpose. She thanked them for their work and for the decades of jobs the company had provided. She said she wanted to understand what they were proud of and what they wished they had done sooner. The question moved the room. Pride came first, then regret. People spoke like they had been waiting to be asked. One director cleared his throat and said, "We should have opened our apprenticeship program years ago to kids who did not have a relative inside. We told ourselves it was about standards. It was about habit. We can fix that." Another said, "The foundation gave big checks because big checks made photos. We never tracked outcomes in the neighborhoods that needed them. We can fix that too." Zara listened and wrote. When they asked for her plan, she said, "I will bring a draft in 2 weeks. It will be simple. You will be able to say each part in one breath. We will test it in public before we make it final." They did not vote on anything that day. They did not need to. Something had already moved. On the bus home, a woman in scrubs sat next to Zara and fell asleep on her shoulder without meaning to. Zara stayed still and let her sleep. When the woman woke, she apologized and smiled and got off 3 stops later. It was the most ordinary kindness, and it steadied more than any speech. That night, the grandmother pulled a box from the top shelf of the closet. Inside were old letters wrapped in a ribbon and a small velvet pouch. The ring from the will lay inside the pouch, warm from her palm. She set it on the table and looked at it for a long time. He was not brave when it counted, she said, but he found a little courage at the end. Sometimes that is all a person gets. Zara reached across the table and took her hand. "We will make more of it than he did," she said. They planned the town hall date and chose a simple suit for her to wear when she faced the shareholders in a few months. Not a costume, just something that let her move and breathe. Her grandmother taught her how to hem the sleeves by hand. They worked in quiet, the thread moving through fabric with small, patient sounds. Before bed, Zara wrote in her notebook again. Learn the payroll schedule. Ask about supplier standards. Ask why the cafeteria has no vegetarian option on Wednesdays. Call the teacher who wrote. Call the boy with the chart. Make the sign for the town hall. She set the notebook by the lamp and lay down. The room was the same it had always been. The sound of the bus on the corner was the same. The soft tick of the kitchen clock was the same. Her life was not the same. Morning would bring more noise. Lawyers would file more papers. Commentators would speak with loud certainty about a life they did not know. She could not quiet them all. She could choose where to put her attention. She closed her eyes and pictured the folding chairs in the recreation center. She pictured names on scholarship forms. She pictured the tower's basement with its pipes and valves that did not care who owned the company as long as someone turned the right wheel at the right time. She let that be the last image. Work that mattered. Hands on real things. The rest would follow. In the dark, her phone buzzed once more. She did not reach for it. She turned on her side toward her grandmother's quiet breathing and let sleep come, not as escape, but as fuel. Tomorrow she would stand in the same conference room where she had once felt small. She would not be ready for everything. She would be ready enough. The recreation center smelled like floor polish and coffee. Folding chairs sat in neat rows. A hand-painted sign near the door read, "Tell the truth and be kind." Volunteers checked a list and handed out small headsets for translation. A teenager at a table drew arrows on a map to show where people could find childcare and water. Zara arrived with her grandmother and the advisory team. No stage, no podium. She stood on the same level as everyone else. She held a notebook and a pen. Her hands did not shake. Neighbors spoke first. A woman in scrubs said the hospital lobby had never felt like it was for her. A small business owner said a big project years ago had raised rents on his block. A teacher asked for internships that did not require a family connection. A maintenance worker from the tower said the boiler room was always short on parts by the end of winter. He also said he loved his job and wanted to help the building run better. Some people were angry. They had a right to be. Some were careful. Some were kind. A boy from the second row raised his hand and lifted the same chart he had mailed. He explained how many scholarships could fit into the fund if the overhead stayed low. He spoke fast. He knew his math. The room clapped for him. He went red and smiled. Zara listened. She wrote names and needs. When it was her turn, she kept it short. "I cannot fix yesterday," she said. "I can do work today. Here is what I can promise now. A public report in 60 days on past contracts. A paid apprenticeship program that starts this summer. A scholarship list with clear rules and simple forms. Free legal clinics at the foundation twice a month. A meeting in this same room in 3 months where we tell you what we did, not what we plan to do." She did not ask for forgiveness. She asked for help. People signed up for committees. A retired accountant offered to teach budget basics to scholarship students. A caterer said she would bring food to the next meeting at cost. A grandmother in a blue sweater hugged Evelyn and whispered welcome back in a way that held more than words. The work began to move like a wheel that finally caught. She spent mornings learning the company. She walked floors with Leon and met the crews who kept the place alive. She visited a site where a new building would rise and asked the contractor how many local hires he could make if the company subsidized training. He gave a number. She wrote it down and told him she would hold him to it. In the afternoon, she sat with Priya and Jorge and wrote policies in plain language. No more vendors who cut out small firms by using hidden fees. Scholarships that paid for laptops and bus passes, not just tuition. A hotline that went to real people, not a recording. Small things changed. The cafeteria added a vegetarian option on Wednesdays. The lobby installed a ramp that should have been there years ago. The reception desk started using a script that did not assume who belonged and who did not. These were not headlines. They were the start of a new habit. The widow and her son kept fighting in the press. They called the plan a vanity project. They said the company would fall. The court case moved on its slow path. The restraining order had been denied. The larger fight would take time. Zara learned to let the lawyers carry the legal arguments. While she carried the work, 2 months passed. The first report went live on the foundation website. It owned what the company had done wrong and what it would do to repair it. There were numbers, there were dates, there were names of people in charge of each task. There was a phone number where a human answered. The apprentices showed up in new steel toe boots with wide eyes and wide smiles. A young woman in the group said she had wanted this for years and had never known how to get through the door. Now, the door had a handle she could reach. 6 months came fast and slow. The shareholders' meeting filled the same tall room where the will had been read. Zara wore a suit that let her move. Her grandmother sat in the front row with a small bouquet someone had given her on the way in. Mr. Morrison stood at the side like a lighthouse. The board sat with their papers ready. Zara stepped to the head of the table and spoke into the room, not down to it. "We build things that last," she said. "The city sees our towers. It will now see our steps. Here is the plan." She kept it to 5 promises. 1. A $40 million scholarship program with mentors and paid internships, not just checks. 2. Apprenticeships that start in high school and lead to union jobs, with seats reserved for students who have no family inside the company. 3. Vendor rules that open bids to smaller firms and score fairness as a requirement, not a bonus. 4. Foundation grants that go where our past projects caused harm, and reports that show outcomes, not photo walls. 5. A culture audit every year, published for all to read, with targets set by the people who do the work. She showed the budget in clear blocks. She showed the risks and the ways to meet them. She did not hide the cost. She did not hide the return. The return was not only money, it was trust. It was a workforce that stayed. It was a city that did not turn away when it saw the company name. Questions came. Real questions. A director asked about profit margins in year 1. She answered with numbers and also with the reason. Another asked how to measure repair. Priya answered with the metrics they had chosen and why. Leon spoke about retention when workers see chance and respect. Ruth spoke about telling the story in a way that did not sell pain. Then it was time to vote. Hands rose around the table. The plan passed. Not because of guilt. Because of work. Outside, cameras waited. She gave a short statement. She thanked the board. She thanked the crews. She said the plan would be judged by what people could feel in their lives, not by what they read on a poster. She did not say more. The months that followed were busy and ordinary at the same time. The apprenticeship class learned on real sites. The scholarship list opened and filled in hours. A girl from a small apartment on the west side cried when she saw her name, and then laughed through the tears. The office received handwritten notes with careful penmanship from elders who had watched the city change and felt something healing for the first time. One afternoon, a letter came from a student in another state. She wrote that seeing Zara stand in that room made her feel less alone in her own school. She wrote that she did not want money. She wanted a list of books to read and a reminder to keep going. Zara sent her a list and a note that said, "Keep going." Then she added her to the scholarship newsletter as a friend of the program. A year passed. The court case ended with a final ruling that upheld the will. The widow and her son moved away. The headlines moved on. That was fine. Headlines did not keep boilers running or scholarships honest. On a quiet Saturday, Zara and her grandmother walked through the garden behind the mansion. The roses were in bloom. A small plaque near the path carried 2 initials worn thin from years of touch. Evelyn held the small velvet pouch in her palm and then put it back in her pocket. She had chosen not to wear the ring. She kept it close anyway. "He was not brave when he was young," she said. "You were." Zara looked at the house and then at the tower on the horizon. "I am trying to be steady," she said. They sat on a bench. Bees worked in the lavender. A child's laugh floated from the next yard. For a few minutes they did not speak. They did not need to. Later, Zara rode the bus alone to the corner market. The bell over the door gave its soft ring. The owner waved and handed her a bag of fresh rolls. On the corkboard by the register hung a flyer with the foundation logo, "Free legal help. Second Thursday. Bring your questions. No appointment needed." She walked back outside and watched the city in evening light. The glass of the tower did not look like a wall. It looked like a mirror that could reflect the people who built it, cleaned it, guarded it, kept it alive. Her phone buzzed with a reminder. Town hall tomorrow. Same room, same chairs, same sign. She smiled. She would be there early to help set up. She would test the microphones and count the headsets. She would make sure the doors stayed open. Power, she had learned, was not a throne. It was a list on a kitchen table. It was a chair pulled out for someone who had never been asked to sit. It was the courage to tell the truth and the patience to do one right thing and then another. She started down the block toward the bus stop. The evening breeze smelled like bread and summer rain. The work waited. She was not alone. She was ready.